Greetings and welcome to another Inner Hour. Thanks for being here tonight. And we have almost the right time on Anis clock, so that's some improvement. Hang on while I adjust one more thing. Be right back. I think we got it. Okay. Welcome here. So I hope you're having a good week so far. And even if you're not, this is the end of it. So you can take this hour and kind of let go of all that and chill out and begin to relax and move into the weekend. Whether you do Shabbat or whether you just have the weekend off or whether it's just another day, hopefully it's a wonderful one where you're reminded of how blessed you are. Alrighty, so let me see here. Let's start with our my candle lighting, which I invite you to participate in if you like at home, or participate by watching mine. Shabbat Shalom. So just a quick thing, not our subject for the night, but Shabbat Shalom is a Hebrew greeting that's said at the beginning of or during Shabbat, and it basically means the peace of Shabbat. So two things that really popped in just as I was ready to start that are not part of the focus for the night, but seem to be wanting to be said by me. So one is that shalom, the Hebrew word shalom, which also means hello and goodbye. It's kind of like aloha in Hawaii. It means hello, goodbye, peace. The root word of that in Hebrew is a word that basically means complete or whole. Excuse me. So the idea is that it's when we experience that wholeness or completeness that we actually finally feel at peace. Or conversely, when we feel at peace, it's because we're experiencing that sense of wholeness and completion, connectedness. The other thing about Shabbat is that for those who either practice it or those who just know about it, it's the root word, for the English Sabbath. But most people probably who grew up in a Jewish or Christian tradition grasped that it was one of the so-called Ten Commandments. One of the things we're supposed to do, we're supposed to keep and observe Shabbat throughout all the generations, according to the book of Exodus and elsewhere. What some people don't maybe realize or really pay much attention to is that it was not just a rule that God instituted for mankind, it was what the Creator itself did, according to the Genesis stories, that at whatever point of the creating process, that which is the maker of all, whatever you call that, we'll say God, that God at that point decided enough. There's enough in place. Whether it's all complete and done is another question philosophically, but that it was complete for what it was to be at that point, to set everything in motion. And at that point, according to the texts in Hebrew, God rested from his creation, from the work of his creation. Maaseh Bereshit. And it was instituted for us because if God needs to rest, so do you and I. And so and one would think that would be obvious, that it wouldn't need to be a guideline or a commandment or a rule or whatever you look at it as. That it would be apparent that we need to do that. I mean, we spend roughly a third of our life in sleep. That idea of rest is certainly something important to the biological mechanism, but it's also important to us as living beings, as souls that we are, that we rest from our creation, which is what the idea of practicing Shabbat, from my understanding, what the central core of that's all about is set aside a time where you disengage from your worldly responsibilities and your worldly work and your worldly creation. Not just your job, but your worldly creations. The manipulating and worrying about and trying to control your family so that everything works right. Manipulating and controlling your finances so that all that works right. Trying to be in charge of the universe so that it runs the way it's supposed to run. Let go of that for at least a time on a regular basis. And Shabbat is a reminder to let go of that at a regular time once a week, and ideally for at least 24 hours. The traditional Shabbat, not that I'm saying you have to keep it that way, but the traditional Shabbat is essentially, without all the added rules later, essentially from sundown Friday evening to the first visible stars Saturday evening. So at least a 24-hour period, usually, sometimes longer, depending on the seasons, where you disengage from that. And instead, you do things that nourish and refresh and restore your soul, whatever those may be. Things like prayer, meditation, study, things like taking a walk, things like being in nature, things like spending time with your loved ones, things like spending time in quiet, things like reading, things like spending time pursuing things that uplift you and free your heart and bring that awareness of joy back into your life, whatever those things are for you. There's a whole list of right and wrongs about Shabbat, but if you get really caught in the list of right and wrongs, then you're already violating the principle of Shabbat, which is to stop stressing about doing everything right and controlling everything. So from my perspective, entering into the spirit of Shabbat means entering into a spirit of freedom, to really do what inspires you and really do what restores you and really what enlivens you. And if somebody else says, well, that's not spiritual enough, or you shouldn't do that, then that should be part of your letting go of Shabbat, letting go of their opinion of you, because that's not what Shabbat is about. So that's just a little reminder. And some of you, I know this is definitely not true of all of you, but I do know it is for sure true of some of you, including us, meaning Ani and I. There are certainly times in life when the responsibilities that we've chosen to bear demand an attentiveness and a diligence that requires a lot of our energy and a lot of our time. Tax season for tax preparers, ball season for baseball players or sports players, heavy seasons at work, busy times at work, whatever those may be. We all have seasons or times or phases in our life that we're going to be busy and we're going to be have a difficult time resting because we have so many responsibilities to fulfill in that time frame that it's really unrealistic to think we're going to have very open-ended, uncluttered, unstructured time to just unwind. Carefree time, which it seems is harder for many of us to find than maybe it used to be. Or maybe it's not for you. But in any case, for those that it is, it's important to make that time. Whether you make it Friday night to Saturday, or whether you make it some other time, or even if at best you can take a half a day or a few hours here and there, that you set up with that intent, not where you accidentally stumble into a free space, oh, I can breathe here for a minute, not that, where you set it up intentionally to do that with that focus of freeing yourself from the stressors of the world and restoring yourself in the spirit of life again. However that works for you and however you would phrase that. It's important to do. Because what I witness around me, particularly in people who are very creative, particularly in people who are very responsible and dependable and reliable people, less so in those who are not, but particularly in those people, particularly people who really, really try to do it right and to take care of things that they're responsible for and to help others. The caregivers consciousness in us, which I know is in many of us in this group, hard to stop doing that, hard to let go of that for a space. I'm not suggesting you let go of it forever, but I am suggesting you build in spaces where you do let go of it, because it will really ultimately weigh on your heart and your body and your spirit if you don't, which is the wisdom of why Shabbat was set in place in the first place. So seriously, if you're not doing that, consider taking time for it. And I'm going to say one last thing, and then we'll move into the topic of the evening, if we ever get to it. I know there are people that say, well, I can structure my own time now. I'm retired, or I'm self-employed, or whatever. Yeah, well, been there, done that. And those who can structure their own time often jam it full of responsibilities. So the other thing I hear is that, well, yeah, but I can take some time off whenever I want to. Yes, you can, but you don't. And when you do, it's a happenstance, it's not done with intention, it's not really entered into fully in that spirit, it's a momentary breather in the hectic pace that might be your life. So I'm suggesting you make it part of your life to build in that discipline of not holding the responsibility and stressing about it and figuring it out, but intentionally and purposefully disconnecting from it. And no matter what happens, whether it's a phone call or an email or a person saying, no, get sucked back into that, don't do it. Hold that time as sacred. It's kind of like people who say to me, well, I'm in meditation. I'm in a meditative state all the time. My whole life is a meditation. Yeah, well, I'm sorry to say this, but I don't believe you. I believe it's possible that every now and then we can get in this wonderful state where we are very contemplative and kind of in that meditative flow of spirit. I do definitely believe that's possible. I've been there. I know it's possible. And if you really can do it 24/7, God bless you, and you should be teaching classes, because even the people that tell me they do, they don't. And I see that it's really not reality. It's their fantasy, but it's not true. So taking time to do your spiritual practices, whatever they consist of, meditation, study, prayer, service, whatever it is, making a conscious time for that with intentionality is much more beneficial and more productive spiritually, in my experience, than talking yourself into thinking, I'm always in that state and I'm always kind of going with the flow. Well, God bless you if you are, but chances are you're going with the flow ends up being, everything's really good, I'm in the flow right now, so I don't have to set aside any more time for this because I'm in the flow. And eventually what happens is I get in the flow of, oh, and I also need to take care of the house. Oh, I'm also in the flow of taking care of my family. Oh, I'm also in the flow of doing these responsibilities. Well, and pretty soon what you're in the flow of is the world again. And then, not that that's a bad thing, but that what often happens is then being in the flow of the world, you feel burdened and strapped and stressed about all your responsibilities. So that's not the meditative state, in case you haven't noticed. So, so my 2 cents worth is get real about what you can and can't do, and what really works and what really doesn't. And build in times that really do work to restore your soul and renew your joy in life and your enthusiasm for your life. Whatever those things are, find them and build time for them. Because life will be over before you know it, and why have lived all of it in stress when it's not necessary? So, okay. Talking to me here, maybe you too. So onward. The readings tonight all kind of center around the theme of awe. Not like aw shucks or oh that's terrible or oh isn't that sweet, but AWE, awe. You know, the being astonished by wonder. Something that I've talked about before, and something that for me, because I was very fortunate to have, in many ways, a very blessed childhood, I experienced awe actually quite a lot as a young child, doing the traditional awe-inspiring things, lying with no worries and no cares and no responsibilities, on a lovely soft field or yard of grass and looking up at puffy white clouds in a beautiful blue sky, and imagining animal shapes and imagining living in the clouds and walking on top of them and all those things, and just feeling the expansiveness of it. Or at nighttime, especially in the desert. I'm not a big desert fan actually as far as wanting to live there, but the desert as far as night vision is extraordinary, and because there's no ambient light from the city and all of that, looking into the universe as it is surrounding us, into the starry field at night, and the vastness of it, and the palpable expanse of it, to me is an extraordinary thing. Still, when I remember to do it, and I'm away from city lights where I can see it, which doesn't happen very often these days, but those kind of things. Hearing a piece of music that's just extraordinary and brings you to tears, or makes you feel like you're soaring in the heavens, or some music that just really gets to you, can produce that sense of awe. Watching unexpected kindness produces that sense of awe in me. Receiving unexpected kindness or mercy, when I feel within myself full well that I am not deserving of it, and yet there it is, that produces a sense of awe in me. Watching people overcome what I can't imagine even bearing, and they overcome it and live in faith and contentment and willingness to keep moving forward under extraordinarily awful circumstances. That's an awesome thing to me. Watching a child be born, delivering a child being born, because I've done both of those a number of times. Extraordinary experience. Watching somebody pass from this world through death at peace and embracing it, which isn't always the way it happens, is an amazing thing. So there are lots of moments of awe that, I mean, far more probably than we recognize, because we get so busy, we don't pay attention. And I think we miss a lot. But that sense of awe, well, which for me, I have many recollections of when I was younger, and fewer recollections of as I aged, sadly. But that's just being honest. The moments of awe that I've had as I've aged have tended to be ones with very spiritual content, and have often been ones where I was intentionally, this sounds kind of redundant, but it isn't, intentionally paying attention, really paying attention to life and to the people in my life and to the life in me and to how all that's unfolding. The extraordinary, I use that word a lot now, but extraordinary set of factors that all have to fall in perfect alignment for any single thing to even take place ever. But especially things like meeting your soulmate, meeting a dear friend, finding just the right job or just the right house, or finding just the right place when you go on vacation. Any of those just the right, wow, this just right thing happened. Totally beyond your control. And when you look at all the factors that had to take place for that to come into being, a nearly, apparently almost infinite amount of this had to happen for that domino to fall, for this domino to fall, for that to fall, for this to happen. An amazing set of things have to occur for anything to take place. So, anyway, I'm going to read you some things from the Bible about awe. This is from Genesis 28:17. And he said, "How awesome is this place! This is none other than the house of God, the gate of heaven." This is another one. Deuteronomy 10. For the Lord your God is the God of all gods and the Lord of all lords, the one great, mighty, awesome God. This is from Job 25. Awe belongs to him who makes peace in the heights. A term used to talk about the heavens or higher consciousness or higher spiritual realities. This is from Psalm 33:8. Let all the inhabitants of the world stand in awe of him, meaning God or the Creator or the Divine. That's one thing I'm going to take a moment here and just say. It is more than possible to talk about, again, God. I'm using that in the biggest possible, inconceivable sense, and rather than trying to continually describe that which is boundless, timeless, inconceivable, and endlessly vast. It is easy to talk about God, to think about God, to fantasize about God, to argue about God, to create beliefs about God, to create ways of being that we think we should live that would please God. It's easy to do all of that God stuff and not experience awe at all. Because none of those things are God. The reality of it. All of those things are concepts and language and ideas and hopes and fears and notions, and none of which are bad. We all do that, and it's fine. Those can help kind of point us toward the reality. But let's not confuse it with the reality. My experience, and the experience of mystics throughout the ages, if you study them, the experience of great teachers or mystics that I personally have known and spoken to, that have had divine or God encounters, one commonality to all that, including my personal experience, is one cannot literally, not figuratively, not metaphorically, not thinking-wise, one cannot literally stand in the presence of God and be in anything less than awe. It is overwhelming in every conceivable good sense. And that, I believe, is the kind of awe these prophets and teachers in these quotes are talking about. This is Psalm 139:14. I give thanks to you, my Lord, because I am awesomely and wonderfully made. Wonderful are all your works, and my soul knows that very well. That is the part of us that knows that. The more awake we are to our soul, the more we stay awake to it, the more accessible we are for experiences of awe and wonder, because we can see the spirit of what is, versus being overly focused into the mind or the emotions or the physical. It sometimes dims our vision and dulls our experience of it. Now a couple from the New Testament, then we'll do our meditation. This is from the book of Acts, 2nd chapter, 43. And it's talking about, excuse me a second, my throat's a little dry. It's talking about the experiences of the apostles and the experiences of people who are beginning to follow Yeshua, or Jesus' words, and practice, and to live what he's teaching. It's talking about what they're experiencing through their encounter with him and through beginning to try to live the way he's describing. So the everyone here in the first word is referring to those people who are in Yeshua's camp, so to speak, and either interacting with him directly or interacting with his apostles and trying to develop this way of living that Yeshua was teaching. Everyone in the community kept feeling a profound sense of awe. And there continued to be many wonders and signs that took place even through his apostles. So one of the things about Yeshua is that by all accounts, it was next to impossible to be in his to be in his presence and to not be powerfully affected by it. Some people were powerfully affected by it in a way that frightened them and they resisted it. Some people were healed because of it. Some people were inspired and changed their life because of it. Some people were transformed. But what you don't ever read, or I never have in any account of somebody encountering Yeshua, what is not ever said is, yes, they met Yeshua, they heard him speak, he talked with them, and they went, I don't know, it's okay, I guess. Never. Doesn't happen. Strong impact of being in his presence, however you took it, positive or negatively. Not lukewarm, not neutral, not unaffected. One of the most powerful things about the Jesus movement was not his philosophy or his teaching, because the truth is, while many Jews don't want to hear it, many Christians don't either, the truth is that his teachings were essentially the same ones that Moshe gave, and the same ones that Melchizedek gave, and the same ones the great teachers after him gave. That really wasn't what was so powerful and so transformative and so different. Yes, there were some differences. Yes, he was trying to kind of re-energize Judaism of his day, much like the Baal Shem Tov did in his day and other Jewish reformers did in their time, or other Christian reformers did later in their time, trying to get back to the core living essence of these teachings again, and away from all the staid ritualized, rigid, rule-oriented religion aspect. But the power of Yeshua's ministry, from my perspective, was not actually the teaching itself, which is powerful, but it's been around way before him. And not the ideas of it, or even the practices, all of which are great and helpful. The power of it was him. The power of it was he so embodied this and so lived it, that the impact he had on people was just astonishing. And there are people that still do that still have that impact on people. Maybe you're one. So the power of this movement was this person-to-person dynamic life, which he called the abundant life, that he wanted everyone to have, and that he certainly lived. That, the difference between living a flat life or living a roller coaster emotional life and living a life of abundance, where you have this spiritual treasury that you're living in and with, is an amazing thing that far too people have. And that's what people, even very poor and uneducated people who actually had awful life conditions, found this abundant life in his presence, and found it even when they weren't in his presence, when they began to take in what that was all about and how to do it, and how to, the attitudes that help support that, and the practices that help support that, and the faith in God that opened us to that possibility. Those were transformative for people. Not just the teaching, but seeing the fullness of that being embodied in somebody. His presence was powerful. Even to his enemies, it was powerful. And that kind of dynamic presence is only possible not through believing in the teaching. That's an essential step, of course, to beginning to live it and embody it. But the power of that is not through his belief. The power of it is through his being that. And the power still between a great spiritual teacher and somebody who has all the informational knowledge about the same teachings and can even perhaps articulate them clearly, but they don't live that in their being. They just think about it or they study it, but that's not how they relate to their wife. It's not how they relate to their child. It's not how they engage with their coworkers. It's not how they engage with their neighbors. There's a diminishment of all that. That's just all taking place up here somewhere. But it's not here. It's not here it is. It doesn't, our belief doesn't transform our neighbors. Our belief doesn't make our community better. Our belief doesn't heal us, or, except in the sense that it opens us to that abundance. But what I'm talking about is this transformational effect. Belief is definitely a part of it, but that's not the power of it. The power of it is when we get it to the point that we start living that way. And I don't mean perfectly, and I don't mean without failures or flaws. Nowhere does he teach that you have to do this perfectly without failure or flaws, and nowhere does he teach that's even possible. But this being present in the spirit of life and letting that live in us, that changes everything. And we can still live that and still not believe exactly the same way. You can meet somebody who has a different belief about Jesus, or a different belief about Buddha, or a different belief about the afterlife, or a different belief about reincarnation than you do, and yet recognize, wow, they are really living this presence. This is really alive in them. You can see that. You can feel it. You can honor that. You will be moved by that. And then if you start talking with them, you may be surprised to discover, but they don't believe that. They don't think the same way I do. They don't believe what I believe. Who cares? The belief is a stepping stone into something. It's not the goal. So Whether you use the same stepping stones I did to get to the goal we're after, or whether you use different ones, who cares? Getting to the promised land, so to speak, which is not a place, but getting to that is not about the stepping stones. And it's also, by the way, really difficult to get there if you insist on carrying every stepping stone with you through the whole journey. Good luck. They get pretty heavy. So, anyway, this transformation that people experienced, I really believe, from what I've learned so far, was through encountering his presence, and then encountering the presence of his apostles and others who were beginning to embody that dynamic life, that spiritual life that he spoke of, that he called the kingdom of heaven. Not a place over there somewhere, but a being, a way of being, now and then, a way of being. So, okay, this is the last one. This is from New Testament also, Hebrews 12:28. Therefore, since we have received a kingdom, in the sense I was just talking about it, since we have received a kingdom that cannot be shaken, let us show gratitude. For through gratitude, we offer to God an acceptable service with our reverence and our awe. So with that thought, let's go into the quiet together. Bring our attention inside. Begin to focus on that holy presence in you. And not just in you. It is not only alive in you, it is alive in me and in all those here. It is in life. You are not only bearing that presence within you, you are immersed in that presence everywhere. So let us focus on just being with and in that presence and allowing it access to our consciousness, in our soul, in our minds, in our hearts, and our bodies, through every facet of us. May that divine life live fully. May it be unbounded in its expression through us. May it meet as little resistance from us consciously as possible. May we yield to it more and more. For that is where we find the peace that eludes us. The love that does not fade or die. And the joy that sometimes seems missing. Lord, reveal to each and every one of us in this night, in this moment, the reality of your being in us, through us, and around us, always. Let's just gently bring our attention back once more. I bless the day, I bless the night, I bless the ways your love is always in my life. I bless the strong, I bless the weak, I bless all those who have and those who are in need. There is a light, not always seen, that shines on you and me. I bless the day, I bless the night, I bless the ways your love is always in my life. I bless the strong, I bless the weak, I bless all those who have and those who are in need. There is a light, not always seen, that shines on you and me. There is a light too seldom seen, and it shines on you and me. So thank you for joining us for this inner hour this week. I want to take just a moment to invite any of you locally. I'm going to be the guest speaker at Unity this Sunday. Their services are at 10:30, so you're always welcome there, but you're definitely welcome there this week. I'll be there, and I think all of you know, but in case you don't, Unity records all of their Sunday services and then posts them to their YouTube, Unity of Fort Wayne YouTube channel. So you can look at anything anybody's done there for, they have, I think, years worth of stuff up there. And also this meeting, God willing, has been recorded and will be posted to One by One's YouTube channel. You should all know about that, but if you don't, send us a text or an email or something and we'll show you the link of how to get to the YouTube channel. It's only a repository for the inner hour recordings, so people who want to can look at them again, or if they miss them, they can look at them for the first time. And so that's just, I just post them up there once they're recorded. So, alrighty, thank you all again, and thanks, Lois. I just got a little chat message, so thank you. I hope that and I ask that we all receive the blessing this week of experiencing for ourselves, either as a reminder because we already know it, or as an awakening because we haven't yet known it, that we have the experience of what it really is to live this dynamic, abundant spiritual life. Whatever our physical, financial, worldly conditions may be, God willing, they're good and improving. But no matter what, that we experience for ourselves, not as a hope or a nice idea, but we really experience at some point this week what that reality is, to really live this dynamic life of spirit that we've been offered, and to discover that or rediscover it again for ourselves this week. And for those of you who already know of it and are doing that, to whatever degree we're all doing it, notice the people around you that you come in contact with this week. Not just your close friends and close family, not just that too, of course, but notice especially maybe the people you don't usually notice, the person at the checkout line at the grocery store who's waiting on you, or the bag person, or the person at the teller window at your bank, or at a drive-through if you get fast food, or somebody who waits on you at a sit-down restaurant, or whatever it may be, somebody you're walking past in the neighborhood, somebody who says hello to your dog, or you say hello to their dog, or whatever the case is. Notice when you are in that dynamic living state of consciousness, notice that the effect it has on people you encounter, because it does. It does have an effect. People who were taciturn and sour looking suddenly brighten up, not always of course, but often suddenly brighten up a little bit, or somebody who is frowning and they're having a obviously difficult, stressful day suddenly have a little smile, or you say something a little encouraging to them. But again, it's not just the words, it's this presence. It affects people, because that's the life that the soul in all of us is really seeking, and the soul is longing to show us how to live, and so few of us do. So when we see it, even if it's just a passing encounter, in a line somewhere, it affects people. I remember one time years ago, I promise this is a real short story and then we'll wrap up. But I remember one time years ago, I had to get a driver's license renewed, and it was one of those years you had to get the new things and you had to actually go in person. And I went in the dreaded, BMV, and it was packed. It was pouring down rain, and they didn't open on time. So all of us were literally standing out in the rain, dozens of us. And so not many of us are in a good mood, and we're drenched. And we get inside, and they open up, and it runs the way you might think it's running, and people are frustrated, and you have to take, here's your number, 1232 or whatever. And so we're sitting in all these chairs waiting, to be called up for our particular business we need to transact at the BMV. And everybody, frankly, is pretty grouchy. And these poor employees are just starting their day. This is their first. This is minute one of my job today. All these angry, wet people, and this guy comes in, even before they open the doors. Actually, he's like kind of milling around among some of us and talking about, wow, it's pretty wet out here, and you look more drenched than I do, and just engaging in conversation. And it somehow failed to annoy everybody. It actually cheered them up, and it made people feel a little better, and had this kind of camaraderie. And then this group that wasn't speaking at all to each other, of total strangers, began talking and having conversations, and it passed the time more quickly, and it was pleasant. And we went inside, and then he did the same thing. And the the person who gave him his 1232 number in line, he said, this must be a tough thing to face, every morning like this. And he said, so I just want you to know I appreciate your work, and I'm gonna do my best to be nice to you today. And that person just kind of lit up and smiled, and then it kind of, you can kind of see this ripple effect. It kind of spread through the room of more people, at least, maybe not all, but many more people, just sort of kind of saying, okay, we're all in this together, and how do we make the best of it instead of the worst of it? And it was, but it was just one brief moment of this encounter with somebody who was in this dynamic space of living fully. And I don't know whether they're a spiritual person or not, or whether they'd even believe any of this stuff or not. But in that moment, it didn't matter, because what happened through their presence was a spiritual moment. So anyway, enough of that. Thank you all for being here. I'm going to end the recording, and we'll say goodbye for this week. Hopefully see some of you on Sunday, and hopefully see the rest of you, if not before, at least at the next dinner hour. All right. Love you all. Thanks.